Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our session on using API-led cloud integration to connect your apps and data. I'm Paul Varley. I'm in product marketing at TIBCO Software, and I'm here with my colleague, Todd Bailey from product management.
Hello, everyone.
And we're going to start off the session today with a little bit of audience participation. So we're going to make sure everybody's awake here after lunch. I'm going to ask for a show of hands. First, have you worked on or are somehow connected to application and data integration? Anybody?
All right.
All right, that's good. At least half. Secondly, have you played with APIs or done some API development or consumed APIs that someone else wrote? Nice. All right.
Encouraging.
Have you heard about the term Integration Platform as a Service, or iPaaS? Okay, not quite as many there. And then have you heard of TIBCO Software, or TIBCO Cloud Integration? Okay, so I'm only seeing maybe about a quarter to a third, so let me stop on that one for just a second. TIBCO is an integration and analytics software company, and we help some of the largest organizations in the world move their data to where it needs to be at the right time and in the right place. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today with the API-led integration. Next, we want to mainly talk about today learning how to use APIs, integration, and connectivity, either for our Dynamics ecosystem or for Azure services. How many people are dealing with one of those two things at least, or both?
So it looks like most of the people are here for the right reason.
Excellent. You're in the right place then. All right, so to set the stage a little bit, I took this quote from Klaus Schwab. He's the founder of the World Economic Forum, and he made this observation. In the new world, it's not the big fish that eats the small fish, it's the fast fish that eats the slow fish. So today we want to ask the question, what do those fast fish look like? And we're going to start by looking at three things that differentiate fast fish or fast companies from slow ones. And I'd argue that the first differentiator is that those fast fish care a lot about the experiences that their customers have. In fact, they want to surprise and delight their customers with something that's even better than they expected. And then the second differentiator is really around the ability to innovate and adapt quickly. If you think about it, things change really quickly in our world today. It wasn't that long ago that if I had a home appliance that broke and I wanted to get it fixed, I would have to call an expert and schedule an appointment and wait maybe days or weeks before he could come and get that fixed. But today, we don't really approach things that way, do we? I go to a search engine, I put in the model number of the appliance that I'm dealing with, I describe the problem briefly, and in a half a second, I have probably 3 or 4 different videos that I can look at that are going to help me solve that problem. And usually it's something obscure, like I was fixing my dishwasher earlier this year, and the video was telling me I have to take a small fork and stick it in some obscure hole in the floor of the dishwasher and twist it back and forth. It's almost like some kind of voodoo magic or something, but it actually worked. It unstuck the pump, and I probably saved a couple $100 in repair costs, and I got my dishwasher working again in 20 minutes instead of 2 or 3 days. So I think that illustrates the way that people and our lives have really changed, and it's not just a static thing. It just continues to change over time. As technology improves and things innovate, companies have to adapt to those changes quickly if they want to stay competitive. And then the third thing is really about the ability to scale and manage cost, because you can come up with a great idea, you can market it well, you can sell it at a price that people want to buy it for, but if you're not making a profit on that product or service, you're just not going to be in business for very long. And so that's the third thing that fast fish are doing these days. And to illustrate these three things, I want to take just a minute and look at how one of our customers, JetBlue, is meeting and exceeding their customers' expectations. If you read up on JetBlue, you'll find out that their mission is to inspire humanity. And that's a really big goal. But J.D. Power has ranked them #1 in customer satisfaction among the low-cost airlines for 12 years running. And it's not just about customer satisfaction for them. Forbes magazine rated them among the top 10 places to work in the United States and #1 in the transportation industry. So they must be doing some things right. Now, JetBlue uses TIBCO's integration technology to get real-time flight and passenger information that enables their 21,000 employees to deliver world-class customer service through a 360-degree view of their customers. And over the years, they've pioneered innovations like they were one of the first to offer the in-flight entertainment systems that have become so commonplace among the airlines these days. And today, they're experimenting with facial recognition systems that are going to allow them to replace boarding passes with electronic systems that will speed up and improve the boarding times, at least for the people who opt in. They're not, at this point at least, they're not making everybody do that, even in the trials. And TIBCO is helping them by moving the data and putting it in the place where it needs to be at the right time, as well as measuring the effectiveness of these innovations and things like how many people opt in, how much time they save, and so forth and so on.
So let's bring this together of how JetBlue has done that. They've set customer expectations that could be delivered through certain core technology themes that they've adopted. And this drives how you build your apps and your infrastructure, and that's what TIBCO is about. They've focused on building APIs around every aspect of what they do. It's pretty fascinating. I've spent some time with JetBlue of what they've innovated with. Now they still have some SaaS systems and some legacy systems that they're still integrating, and so they need solutions, and that's what we help them with. But finally, they started envisioning their apps as microservices, which really change from the customer experience into how they're actually delivering these apps and the experience to the end customer. So let's talk about why isn't everybody doing this? I mean, it seems like a no-brainer. It's we should be doing this, right?
Why isn't everybody?
Integration assets are managing and integrating integration assets. It's a challenging thing. Your landscape is highly complex depending on the size of your organization and how far it's evolved over the time. You've added systems over time, so it's complicated. Your business technology changes rapidly. I know within TIBCO, we've got hundreds of business systems that we use throughout the company, and we're constantly adding to that landscape. So how do you keep up with that? Because people are looking for best of breed. And then lastly, the demands are changing. The priorities of last week were last week's priorities. This week, they're a little bit different. And next week, they're going to be very different. So you need to approach integration challenges in an agile fashion.
And that's really where the APIs come in. You can address these common integration challenges using those APIs because they provide a simple and standard way to connect all of your information assets. You can think of APIs as the connective tissue across your digital business between your applications, data, and people. And for the applications and the data, it really doesn't matter whether it's on-premise, in the cloud, or even on an edge device in an IoT type of scenario. So with an API-led integration approach, you're going to create simple standard interfaces for your business and your IT services. And that's going to allow you to abstract away all the details of the underlying technology. So the people who consume those APIs don't need to know what kind of database it's running on, whether it's Microsoft SQL Server or MySQL or Postgres. They don't need to know table structures or what server it's on, what state or country. All of that is going to be abstracted away so that you just present an API layer that someone else can call so that when they're doing something like writing a mobile app, for example, they're just going to make a REST API call and pass in the information that they need. Meanwhile, the integration layer is going to catch that, execute the integration process, and then return back the results that, let's say, the mobile app was looking for. If it's something like, hey, is there a flight? I want to leave an hour earlier. Can I get on a different flight. That would be an example of something where a mobile app would be tying into an API-led integration piece on the back end. And then you also have to think about it from a integration lifecycle management perspective as well, because the IT landscape in the enterprise is also constantly changing. Things are being swapped out and moved, and so you can change things behind the API while still presenting that, that single interface to the consumers of the API on the front end. So when connectivity to your services is simple and standardized, you're going to see an explosion of usage of those things because it becomes easier and easier to consume. You don't necessarily have to open a project in an IT department to get something done. If there's an API, you may be able to write to it yourself if you're a business user.
Well, there's an interesting use case. You and I were chatting about it a couple of weeks ago. There's a major university that wanted to onboard the rest of the departments to be self-service through APIs. So what they did is they implemented this API-led philosophy, and they exposed the alumni APIs, the APIs to query dynamic CRM, APIs to access all of the university systems. And then they took it a little bit further, because if you think about a university as a small town or a city, they live within a city. So they exposed out some of these endpoints to the Chamber of Commerce and the events so that people could actually query all of the services available at the university. It's a pretty cool use case. We've been trying to get to them to publish this, but it just gives you another kind of aspect to looking at APIs and how you productize that. It kind of leads into where I wanted to go next in talking about the life cycle of an API and how do you develop it, and some of the things that we've learned through the years that we've been doing this. And it really starts with 4 different phases of an API. You conceive of the idea of what is this thing going to do? Then you start to build it. Then you're going to start to manage it, and then you start to consume it. Now, on the right-hand side here, I've got various personas, and they tend to blend a little bit together. Sometimes your app developer is the API developer. We've all worked in companies like that, but by and large, these are the swim lanes that typically these activities belong to. So you start with a model of an API. What is this thing going to do? Is it going to receive an order, or is it getting data? Then you start to share the API with other members of your team. Does this look right? Are we capturing the basic information? Again, it's still in that concept stage. From there, you can start, the app developer can start developing an application stub so he can start his work, because he's got to be able to service the information to that. Then the API designer creates a mock app that can actually simulate responses. And I've got an example of what I'm going to show with what we've demoed, or what we're going to demo today, of what that looks like. Then you get into publishing the mock app. The application developer is designing and building the application. It gets a little bit further along in the process. You start circulating the API with people that are actually going to consume it. You find policies regarding end usage on the API management side. You get into collecting feedback through a release an early release program. And then finally, you can add microservice mesh gateways, publish the API, and you finally launch it to production. But there is a distinct life cycle that you use with API management. And TIBCO has got a solution around this to enable each one of these personas to participate in this.
So that reminds me of something that Satya said in the keynote on Monday morning. He was talking about Bill Gates' goals for Microsoft in the early days, how they wanted to have a PC in every household. And I think they've done pretty well with that. I think we all pretty much have them these days. And then he said that today, Microsoft's goal is to make everyone a software developer. And I think that's also a very ambitious goal, but it ties very well into the way that TIBCO approaches integration. Because our objective in leading with API-led integration is to allow lots of different types of people within a business to do integration work or to build integration. You can even think of integration as an application in itself, in connecting 2 or more things together. And the first type of person within the business that we think about there is the application owner. So this may be somebody like a Dynamics 365 admin type of person, or a database admin, let's say. And in many cases, that person wants to connect different applications together. They might be two cloud applications, or a cloud and on-premise, or a cloud and a database, that kind of thing. So we're going to enable that person to work efficiently, even though that person doesn't have any coding experience or may not know any programming languages, but can still get some work done. And Todd will show you in the demo how that works. The second type of person that we're targeting here is the integration specialist. This is more of your traditional IT worker whose main job is to do integrations between different applications and data. And for that person, we're trying to enable him to go faster and to get more work done in less time, and be more efficient, and work with, again, cloud and on-premise data sources. The next person is the developer, and there we're working with event-driven microservices and functions. So instead of thinking about integration as an app, it might be a feature of another application that the developer is building. And then the final category of person here is the API product manager. So when you are working with partners, or in the case that Todd was just talking about with the university that wants to make APIs available within the larger community, you've got someone who's responsible for governing that API or those APIs, controlling access, giving rights and permissions, and setting rate limits and that kind of thing. And that's where API management comes in. So with this kind of holistic approach of API-led integration, you can enable all sorts of people within your organization to achieve integration tasks, much like Satya was talking about, turning everyone into software developers. Here we can turn almost anyone within an organization into someone who can integrate different apps and data together.
So let's take a deeper look at some of these capabilities that you described. So first is the Connect capability. Really, this is geared towards the business user that you were talking about. It might be the CRM admin. It could be the marketing, the person that's doing Marketo or Eloqua or whatever marketing automation system that they're using. But they have certain integration needs, and they want to service themselves. I go home and I'm able to hook up Google and Alexa to anything I want. We should be able to empower the business users to be able to do that, and that's the purpose of the Connect capability. It simplifies the logic in blocks that they can just put onto a canvas and have an integration up and running. And this pushes that need from IT having to fulfill this to the end user being able to satisfy their needs and be able to adapt. Going back to what we were talking about, the fast fish, or was it the fast fish?
Fast fish, yeah.
Fast fish. This enables them to be the fast fish. So going over to the integrate, so this is your IT that is, their purpose is to, this person's purpose is to build out integrations, orchestration. This is for the enterprise. And so this could be running containers. It allows you to orchestrate and do, all sorts of, operations within integration. And it's powered by BusinessWorks, which has been around for a number of years. And then develop, which is based on an open source FlowGo. This allows you to do event-driven microservices. So this is based on Golang, which is very small, has a super small footprint. It's one of the fastest adopted projects out there in GitHub. And we're just taking the open source and exposing it within the user interface within TIBCO Cloud Integration. Kind of forgot to mention, all of this is running on Azure. Just that's why we're here. And then lastly, talking about the API management, Paul was talking a little bit about API management as far as setting up the security, but there's other aspects, and I talked about the app, be able to set up a mock app to be able to model out an API. This provides you with all of those features and functionality, so you can design out the API and go through all of those lifecycle aspects. So at the end of the day, we've got TIBCO Cloud Integration, which is one interface, which has multiple personas served, which will allow you to connect to any endpoint. Doesn't matter where it's located, whether it's hybrid cloud, doesn't matter. Built on open source software, and independence and flexibility to deploy where you want. You can deploy in Azure, you can deploy on-prem, wherever you wanted to deploy. So we've got all of that feature functionality there.
All right, so now while Todd is setting up for the demo, because we want to show you how all this works and work through a scenario that we've prepared, I just want to take a minute and point out a few of the sort of industry recognition that we've received recently, both in the areas of analyst research as well as peer review sites. So both Forrester and Ovum have recognized TIBCO Cloud Integration as a market leader in their 2019 reports. And the peer review site Trust Radius shows us as a top-rated product, and G2 Crowd also views us as a leader in the industry. And I'd encourage you to go to those websites and read the reviews. Those are real customers who are talking about their experience. A lot of times they have use cases that explain what they're doing. So you can scroll through and find somebody who's trying to do something similar to you, and you'll get unfiltered feedback, just like the kind of thing you're used to when you're shopping online, looking at reviews, same kind of thing for software.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks, Paul.
So let's see a demo, Todd.
Well, let's set it up a little bit to give kind of the background of what we're talking about here and to put it in context. So we work with hundreds of Microsoft partners, and I have conversations with partners all the time. And I talked to one of our partners specifically who gave me kind of a use case that he had been working through, and he works with a just-in-time manufacturer. So we put together a demo, and I can't use the customer in this example, but I also added some other aspects to kind of paint the picture here. So just-in-time manufacturing, for those that might not know, is where you actually don't have the inventory on the shelf because it is built when the order comes in. And in our situation, it's a custom awnings company where you choose on the website the fabric, the equipment, whether you want IoT, what size you want, whether it's wind tolerance, et cetera. So we wanted to be able to show how you could automate the process through dynamic sales, closing an opportunity, and that triggers off a whole process of the factory getting the order, marketing, starting the trickle campaign to get the customer excited about what they're going to receive, all using Microsoft technology, using TIBCO Cloud Integration to facilitate all of this communication. So let me switch over and give you the first view of what this would look from a user perspective. So I'm in Microsoft CRM. Some of you have seen it before, and I've got a few opportunities here. From a user perspective, I'm going to pull up an opportunity, and we're just going to close it. I'm going to say that's pretty good. So at this point, there we go. At this point, this has triggered off a whole process behind the scenes that is going to set the journey for the customer. It will both set the journey for the customer, but it also sets the journey internally for people that are going to be servicing this account. So from a marketing perspective, from a factory perspective, and also from a sales perspective. So if things work well on this demo, let's just see, we'll start to see these notifications come up. And so this is telling me exactly what's happening with this order. So it's already been sent out to the factory. We've got a marketing campaign that has been triggered off to start dripping, getting the customer excited about what they ordered, because they're not going to get it tomorrow. It's not like Amazon. They're going to have to wait a couple of weeks as this is being built out. So the experience in this perspective, from a sales, they can contact the customer and say, hey, it's in the factory right now, and they can check on the exact status. Let me show you how I built this out. So I'm not a developer. I'm a product guy, but I was able to pick up from Microsoft's site how to set this up, and I did this myself. So it's pretty easy. And I think what Satya said, I think there's a lot of truth to it.
Absolutely.
So started off with the service bus. I added a service bus, and I'm just using a free trial. I just went with the defaults on it. I'm not looking for anything too exciting, but there's a lot of different options that you can choose. When I started looking and thinking about the service bus, I started thinking of it as the analogy of it's a highway in which I want data to go forward over to TIBCO Cloud Integration to carry out some actions. So from here, just selected the default options, and then I would have to create a queue because you need a lane for the data to actually transfer over. So we've actually got a couple of queues, and if you come down to our booth later, we've got an IoT example of using the same infrastructure. But I've just got the receive queue here, and when I set this up, it gave me all of the security information I needed. So the next step is, okay, great, I've got a way of moving information from, between Dynamics to something else, but how do I get it there? Well, this is where the registration plugin tool comes into play. And this was super simple too. This was already pre-built by Microsoft. So you just download it, you give it your credentials, it'll connect out to your Microsoft Dynamics instance. Hopefully I got the password right. Maybe? Yes. All right. And this was pretty simple. Honestly, they've really they've outdone themselves in a lot of scenarios. So, from here, all I wanted to do was add a new service endpoint. I'm sorry, register a new service endpoint. And if I go down here, you'll see the service endpoint that I've already configured. So I've got two of them, or I've got the awnings. This is the endpoint that I created, the queue. And then this one is for the IoT message that we've got a demo at the booth. And then from here, you just add in a step. So the step is, what do I want? I want when a opportunity is created, it really fills in all of the data. You decide if it's synchronous, asynchronous. I'm doing asynchronous calls because I want to take it off the queue right away. You hit OK, and it registers this new step. So every time an opportunity in this situation is created, it's going to put a message onto the queue. So one piece I'm not going to show you, but we'll go into Flogo. Now that I've got that message on the queue, I got to consume it. So let's switch over. So this is TIBCO Cloud Integration. This is the three capabilities that we talked about. So Scribe, Flogo, and BusinessWorks. I'm going to go into Flogo. So there's a lot of information that Microsoft includes in that message. It's enormous. And there really is only one piece that I was interested in. It was the opportunity ID. The rest of it I could care less. So I first started off with an app that would catch the message and log it, so I could take a look at what the JSON was looking like. After I looked at the JSON, I was actually able to craft together this process and be able to pull out that specific piece of data. Let me show you, and I think it'll make more sense when you see this. So Flogo, it's pretty easy. It's point and click type of interface. I've got a trigger event here that I'm connecting to the Azure Service Bus. I'm looking at this connection that I had already created at this queue and pulling out information. I'm mapping the flow outputs, so what I got off of the queue, over to a message string, and I just want the raw message out into Flogo. And that way I can manipulate it and do whatever I want. I could also get more information out regarding that message. And there's a lot of functionality within Azure regarding partitions, regarding session IDs. For the simplicity of the demo, I didn't get into that, but you have access to all of that information. So I grabbed the JSON at this point and put it into a JSON string. Then I use this action here to actually pull out what I'm looking for. Again, I'm looking for the opportunity ID. So this makes it easier to give it a snippet of what I'm looking for to use later in the mapping. I do logging because it's always good to log your applications as to what's going on. And then I forward this over to Connect, which is powered by Scribe. So this is taking off of the service bus, routing it over to Connect because I wanted to empower the business users to be able to take this information and create the business process that they want. So now that I've got it there, let's move over to the Connect capability here. So Connect, this is specifically for the people in your organization, sysadmins. It's a very approachable tool in which they can use to create their own integrations. It is a different design environment than what I showed with Flogo, and it's intended to be that way. So I've got a couple of solutions that I've created here, and a solution encompasses a series of steps that you're going to complete in order to accomplish some goal. So I've got the business process here that I created, And this has got a map in it that says process order. So if I open this up, we can start to look at what the logic here is. So it's waiting for a request from Flogo to come in. And here I just simply defined the request as an opportunity ID. So Flogo got me the opportunity ID. I get it in here. From this point, I can start to add in extra data. And I've added in extra connections in here on the right-hand side, and you can see that they're colored with the blocks. So I've got a Dynamics connection that I've already set up, and this exposes all of the blocks or all of the actions I can perform with Dynamics. So I simply have, I want to pull back the status of the opportunity and make sure it's the correct status. So I simply have, the lookup criteria is the opportunity ID, and what I want to pull back is all of the data regarding that to be used later in this map. Then I get into an if condition of, well, what do I want to do? Well, I only want to process those opportunities that are won and that haven't been processed before. So I have a custom entity that I've created, a custom field on the opportunity that I look for if it's true. If it's already been processed, I don't want to process it anymore. This is pretty easy to set up from a business user perspective.
Right, you notice here we're not looking at the JSON or parsing complex curly braces or anything like that.
Really IT, exposing that API and exposing it out via Flogo was a way of API-led integration. So the next step in the process is to get some account details for marketing. So I'm going to look up the account ID, pull this back, and then pull back account details because I got to forward that over to their marketing system. They're not using a Microsoft system in this specific part of the example from the partner. They were using HubSpot. So they needed to forward this on to the marketing system. So here's another connection. You notice the color difference, the marketing automation system. And here we've got the blocks that are exposed as far as what you could do with this. So the user simply brought over a block that said create, and they could rename it to make it self-documenting. So I go in here, and we've got the field. So I've started collecting data on the left-hand side, which is in context. So it started off with that wait for requests, so the opportunity ID from Flogo. I did an opportunity lookup, and I did an account lookup. So I've got that data that I can start putting over here into the target connection for the marketing automation system. One thing I didn't really go into is the formula editor. Sometimes you need a little bit more complex formula as far as the target operations, trimming, cleaning fields. This makes it similar to most Excel, the Excel formula editor, that they could start to do these operations at a target level. You can even do formulas at the source level as well. So we go a little bit further down, we add an activity. So this is going back to CRM. CRM is the yellow, and it adds that marketing. So if I go back over here, this is what triggered this activity to show up here. And actually, I got this number from the marketing automation system, so it's trackable. So the one source of truth is Dynamics CRM, where all of your users primarily are spending their time. This was an interesting, we wanted to incorporate the fact of, this is the factory system that we're sending the order to. So I used the API-led, design to use a mock app and created a mock app that simply responds to the order. So this looks like it's sending the order over to a factory, and it could, but I just stubbed it in with a mock app to simulate that. Once that completes successfully, it adds the manufacturing status. So if I go back over to Dynamics, you see the order is sent to the factory. If it wasn't sent, you could actually do an if-then clause in there, and the users could define something happened with that order and populate it here. So there's one central truth to the integration. And then lastly, it updates the opportunity status and sends back Flogo an update as far as it's completed. So with this design practice of allowing the business users to be able to utilize this and doing all of the hard work over on the Flogo side, you're enabling them to service themselves. If they wanted to add another flow into this, if they wanted to add another touch point, they could certainly do this. It is self-documenting, and the fact that you could pick this up and easily figure out what's going on here. So I am not going to save this. So we're going to take a look at another process flow, which is kind of interesting as well. And it was the idea of, well, you've got this factory system out there. How do you get data from that? Well, the other aspect that you can do is where you can have a deployment of an agent, which is a Windows agent anywhere. So it could be locally, and it could actually read a log file. So I designed this process where it's actually reading the log file from the factory system. And for each record found in this, and it could be, this is a log system, it could be anything that you want, it accepts any format. And then it starts updating the status within CRM based on those, that log file. So if I go back over to CRM and refresh here, I should start, through my mock app, I'll start to see that I've got more updates that are coming in from the factory system that are automated. So the hardware is installed, the electronics is installed, they process the fabric. All of this is just automated, and the business user has been able to do that all from the enablement of the Flogo with the Azure Service Bus. So pretty simply put, let me switch back over to the deck here. So we took Dynamics 365, which I think is for those that are using it, is the center of truth, and use the Azure Service Bus as a conduit to get information over to TIBCO Cloud Integration, where a combination of using develop, so IT exposed this out as an API type of integration, and then the business users could use Connect, which allows them to customize the business process and adapt and become the fast fish, back to the analogy. It implemented marketing automation, so as they want to change their processes, they could do that. The order updates are automatic within 365, and there's no reason that you couldn't use further refinement of this to send out the order updates over to to the customer, or update the web app. There's really no limit to kind of where I ended up. It was kind of a fun exercise because I rarely get to play around with the product, so I was kind of excited. The fact of just kind of putting together these pieces together, which into a pretty cool solution. Now, about the connectivity, I talked about a few of the different connectors that I was using, and there's a lot of different connectivity, and Microsoft themselves, Power Apps, a lot of connectivity there. We've got over 181 different connectors, and they're pretty deep as far as the technology that we're using and what we're integrating with, all the way from SAP to HubSpot to generic connectivity between OData to web services. So there's a lot of different options across the spectrum of what is supported with TIBCO Cloud Integration. The other thing is we've got a lot of different endpoints that we support through the mixing and matching of these different options. And we touched briefly on Flogo, but Flogo is an open source, and there's over 1,500 contributions in the Flogo ecosystem. So you just search the GitHub repository, and you could see it has the most contributions, bar none, than anything else. It is just taken off like wildfire, built on Go, super small, and we actually base the demo that is in our booth based on Flogo. So here's kind of an example of what it's, the demo is doing. So we have an IoT device, and part of the storyline is we've got this awning company, custom awnings, and we want these awnings to be smart. Well, if it's going to be windy out, the awnings should retract. So we've got a device within the booth that actually reacts and sends data up to the Azure Service Bus, and then it interacts again with the Connect capability to update Microsoft CRM. So another example, and this was based on an open source contribution. We just downloaded it, configured it right within the app, and it was up and running. It literally was that simple. So going back to, I guess, the keynote speak, we really did, we were getting to the point where anybody could be a developer, everybody can be innovating and being the fast fish.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we wrap it up here today, we've got a couple of things, a couple of thoughts for you on what to do next. We do have a booth downstairs in the hub, and so if you'd like to learn more, we'd love to have you come down, and we'd be happy to show you, answer your questions, and figure out what's going on there. That's booth number 1749 down in the hub. Also, TIBCO Cloud Integration and everything that Todd has showed you today in the demo is available as a free 30-day trial. So if you go to our website, you want to try it out for yourself, we totally invite you to do that and check it out. And if you have more questions, certainly come by the booth. We'll get a beer, we'll talk through it, we'll show you more stuff. And if you're interested, you can also tweet at Todd if you like. We've got his Twitter handle there for you if you're interested.
Yeah, a couple of things. You could also start your trial on the Microsoft Marketplace. We've got a tight partnership with Microsoft. We've been working with them for a number of years. So you could always start a trial there, and it would just go against your subscription there. We've got an F1 race.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the F1 car.
The F1 car is down on the show floor. And then if you come see us, we'll give you free tickets for the giveaway, which I think is a Bose headset. So come by, see us, get your ticket, and answer any questions.
Yeah. So thanks a lot for your time.